Stand.
Checking and check. Brett? Brett?
Super good.
Hello everybody, my name is Jason Stokes, this is Horia Dociu. Today we're going to talk about bridging the gap from student to professional. And Horia and I have been kind of talking about this. We've been teaching at Futurepoly for the last couple of years. And for one reason or another, every student doesn't fulfill their dream. They don't get hired. They don't become a professional. So, this is obviously disturbing on many levels. We started this school to give people that opportunity, and we feel like we show them the exact curriculum. And for one reason or another, it doesn't happen. Obviously, everyone at school, they want to succeed. So that's what today's talk is about. We want to address each problem or pitfall that you might encounter, and we'll talk about solutions for that as well.
There's basically, can you guys hear me if I stand up like this? Yeah, great. So there's this kind of misconception that as soon as you're done with school or college or whatever, you're ready to go out into the industry, and by all means that's what's advertised and that's what you would hope for. But the truth is that there is, especially depending on how much time you've invested in school, how much you're really picking up from it as opposed to just going through a course. There's, like Jason said, a really huge gap sometimes, too big in fact, between people that are out of school, holding a degree, or even taking specialized classes like we do, and actually getting an entry-level position. So even though the positions they're going for might be even internships, there's still a pretty huge gap to fill, and that's what we want to talk about today, is how to make that job actually attainable.
Mm-hmm. And with the second half of the talk today, we're going to just present a bunch of student work that we've received over the last couple of years, and also present paint-overs, kind of the art critiques we've given them, and to prove that process is ongoing and it's not a linear point A to point B. Congratulations, you did it. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll do Q&A and hopefully have enough time to, if you guys have questions about these pieces or any of these pitfalls, and even if you want to add something we haven't talked about, some way you failed, I'd love to hear that, and maybe we should talk about ways to overcome these. So the very first one is kind of American Idol syndrome. Like, everyone loves that show or whatever, they watch it, and you have these people with insane amount of confidence, and for whatever reason, they don't see where their skill level is really at. There's just a really weird disconnect. This happens all the time in the art world as well. You have people, like myself included, I wanted to do comic book illustration growing up. Like, I was dead set on it, and every year, I'm talking since I was 10, I was like, oh yeah, I think I'm pretty much ready. I'm ready to join Image Comics and just make a go at it. I was that much of an asshole. I thought I was ready to do it.
But Jason, your mom really likes you, art critic.
That's true.
And she's a professional art critic.
Yeah, so that ties in with mom confidence. You have your mom's always, oh yeah, you're pretty much the best one in the world at this. I think you got what it takes. And it's the problem with that. Confidence is great. It'll get you so far. But as soon as you let confidence take you to the point where you're not even trying to learn anymore, that's when you hit a wall, and that's when it's something, it becomes a problem. So what can we do, Horia? How do we solve this?
Well, the truth is that I think everybody, especially the very best professionals, some of the top guys you'll see here tonight are just as stressed out today as they were when they were students about what's the next thing, how do I get better, I don't want to plateau, what can I do to get better, right? None of them have that same confidence that those kids who are crappy singers, I guess Canadian Idol.
Sounds good.
Whatever.
Canadian Idol.
And so it's that kind of like mentality that's basically gonna keep you from sliding into the being the master of mom's fridge gallery. And so you have to sort of compare your work to the target, right? If you're trying to get into the games industry, your buddies at school are not necessarily the best measurement for that. You could be the best kid in your class and still be really, really horrible, unfortunately. So this might sound like completely obvious advice, but start looking at the kind of games you want to work on. If you're trying to get to Assassin's Creed level, look at those games. That's your competition. That's the guys that are out there getting those jobs.
Yeah, a quick note on that. we say that a lot, compare yourself to those games, but one really practical way to do it, you obviously should have reference libraries. You should be building that up constantly. But you should also throw all those Assassin's Creed or Mass Effect screenshots into a folder, and then sprinkle your work in there as well. And as disconnected as you might be, you'll see it when you're cycling through that image viewer. It'll be like, oh crap, there's my piece. Yeah, it looks like garbage. That's an eye opener, and you can just keep working on it until eventually you'll be cycling through that folder, and hopefully you don't notice a big bump.
Right, and the truth is though, you can't always count yourself as the best critic, even when you're comparing side by side. That's something that people just don't think to do. But like on American Idol, I can put that Mariah Carey CD on and think that I sound beautiful too. And so that's when you got to pitch it over and get a third party involved, get that SoundCloud or whatever, and start throwing your stuff up on forums, start putting your stuff up on a sort of learning blog where it's okay to put your crappy work up and it's not like a portfolio, so that your friends and people off the internet, and there's actually quite a few professionals online that are willing to give their advice and critique your work. Or even places like this, if you guys have done the portfolio review, good for you, because I'm sure it was pretty harsh. I know my pops, Daniel Dociu, I think he's here, he was doing it. I know he's a hard ass. I know he's Jesus Christ. He's
not Jesus, but
no, he'll bust your balls, but it's all for the better.
Yeah. One quick addition with the community activities. These people are in the same boat you are. The arena isn't your classroom; it's the world. And so if you're not quite standing out in these community activities amongst other amateurs and some professionals, if you're not winning, consistently every couple months on Creature of the Week or Character of the Week, Environment of the Week, Concept Art and CG Hub, that's an indication. That's a perfect barometer. It's going to be kind of a gut check, but really, use that as inspiration. I mean, this is an extremely competitive thing because it's a fun job, and yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, it's fun, but we have to make that kind of division between, is it a fun job that we want to pursue as a career, or is it just a fun hobby? And that's a very sexy transition to our next point.
Is it more of a hobby, Horia?
Yeah. The thing about that is that the people that are most successful, whether they've been at it for years or they're just the best guy in your class, very little of it has to do with talent. There's definitely people that have an eye for color or a knack for this and that, but there's never, ever going to be a substitute for just white knuckle, hard work, up till 3 in the morning reading. I'm not saying I'm great at that. I'm not saying but that's the difference between you and the next step, is that you have to absolutely love the stuff you're doing, because it's one thing to love it and appreciate it. Like I love Star Trek the movie or whatever, right? But there's a difference between watching a movie and loving it, and loving something so much that you're willing to put every waking hour toward, accomplishing your goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were talking, that's okay. Like, I don't want people to come out of this thinking, damn, that sounds so stressful and serious, I don't even want to deal with it. It's a definite trade-off. When you turn something you love into a profession, that's, it's basically selling out. And you have to really ask yourself, are you okay with this? Are you okay with, instead of coming home, you just watch like all of Battlestar Galactica instead of painting, because you just done that, the entire week. You lose that freedom of expression to some extent. Now, it's up to you to find the right fit for a company and make sure you can still get the best of both worlds. But it's a definite thing that should be kind of on your minds. Is it really something you want to trade in? Do you want to take your hobby, your passion, your love, and commercialize it?
And don't be shy. Hey, I just enjoy watercolor paints, and I'm just gonna decide that it's my hobby. That's beautiful. And if it takes you going to school to figure that out, great. Don't beat yourself up. There's nothing wrong with not being the best artist. You probably can kick my ass at cooking. I've literally fucked up cup of noodle. You guys have cup of noodle here? It's like the microwave noodles. How do you do that, Horia? I don't know. I tried to make Slurpees at home, and I literally had to wash my feet off in the sink, and my grouting was pink. I don't want to paint the whole picture, but I've messed up Kool-Aid, literally. I'm a horrible cook person, but it's a fun thing to try and do, And there's nothing wrong with finding that out through school, except for the
All right. So Horia, if you're saying no, fuck that, it's not a hobby, I love this. This is what I want to do. I'm stubborn, then it has to be your number one priority. It really does. especially when you're in that block, when you're making the run for it, you absolutely need to make that your number one focus. In art school, there was this legend of this student that he like lived in his car, and none of this is BS. He lived in his car. He worked graveyard shift throughout all of school, and he just everything was school. Every assignment he did, he nailed it. He just became a complete monster. And I guarantee you, his life in that period was a complete wreck. I don't even know. He's probably at some gym membership taking showers.
I actually went to a different school than Jason, and we heard the same legend of this guy. Lived in his car. He would shave his head in the parking lot of the Safeway where he slept with some kind of special clippers that he had that had a lighter attachment.
See, I didn't hear that part.
And he was using, instead of sketchbooks, he couldn't afford sketchbooks, so he was using telephone books. But he's a mythological creature, right, Jason?
Is he? No, actually, turns out he got hired at ArenaNet. After like years, he's already been in the industry, and we've been hearing these legends. And should we even? I think we could say his name.
Sure.
This guy's Scott Alba. I'm sure he'd be mortified if we were talking about him right now. But he's just awesome. He's a great artist.
One of the hardest working, most kick-ass artists we've ever had the pleasure to ever share an office with and learn from. And the tricky part was over the years, not so much getting to learn from him, but he was getting snatched up by different studios constantly. Somebody was stealing him away. ArenaNet stole him back. He went to somewhere else. I mean, the guy was just such a hard worker, and to this day, he's not leaning back on his heels and saying, "Oh, I made it." The guy's in there on weekends for no reason other than his self motivation to get better. And he's old. He's like
So,
39.
I mean, the answer here is obvious. You have to live in a car somewhere. Find a cheap car, live in it for a few years, maybe a van or something.
That's not real. But you have to be competitive, and you have to have a bit of an edge to it, right? That's the difference between somebody that does this as a hobby and possibly some of you guys here. There's that little bit of very healthy, friendly competition that you get going with your peers, or your classmates, or the people you work with, or the guys online. There's all this worldwide classroom called the internet that if you know how to use it for anything rather than boobs and funny videos, it can be like the biggest barometer for what your skill set's at. And you really have to ask yourself, is this something that I'm willing to do? And are you comparing yourself to the people next to you? And if you fail, learning from it, if you do a little better, thinking how you can do better next time, because I think that's a big huge that's helped us grow as we're coming up.
I mean, yeah, it's perfect. If there's a healthy competition, I'm sure you've heard that term before, and it's totally that. It's flattering your classmate or your peers and saying, that's crazy. I don't even know how you made that texture a normal map, or how you painted that stroke, what kind of brush you're using. It's that flattery that it diffuses any kind of aggression, and then immediately it's like, oh yeah, people open up, and it's still competitive. You're wanting to know that. You want to be better. You want to, maybe not better, but you want to have those skills, and that's extremely important. There's a right and a wrong way to handle that.
So if you can find that community online of people that you trust that aren't just your buddies who are saying, "Great job, nice work, like XD, that's something very valuable. And you hold on to those people, because both Jason and I have been very fortunate to work with guys that we both went to school with, and then kind of met up together at ArenaNet, that we're still best friends with. Half of them are in the hallways today, and it's been one of the most enriching kind of experiences to help us grow.
So this next thing, I have a kind of a personal story, I guess. Just afraid to fail, and also sometimes afraid to succeed. I guess, it happens all year. Like the cute girl in class or guy, and you have a crush on them or whatever, and you just never want to talk to them because that finite kind of rejection will just crush you. That's the same thing when you're trying to get a job or you're applying to your dream company, and you have to get over that. You just there's nothing else I can say. Like Todd McFarlane was a big inspiration, and back in the 90s when Image Comics was crazy to me. That's what I wanted to do. And in interviews he was talking about, I got about 80 to 100 rejection letters, and I hung them on my fridge, and that was kind of his fueled the fire, and that's important. Like he turned that something completely negative, like being rejected. I can't even imagine being rejected that many times from like a job. But he turned it into something positive.
It's like exactly like thinking of asking out that cute girl or boy or whatever, and you're not going to succeed if you don't try. And I've met a lot of students who come through Futurepoly that have already had 2, 4, 6 years of freaking experience at a school, and you really have to ask them, do you think that you're one of those people that's a bit of a career student, if you've heard that term? There's nothing wrong with education. This, by all means, this is furthering your education, whether you're a full-time employee or a student starting out. This is furthering education. So is a master's degree and all that stuff. But there is this line where, a lot of people kind of tend to think of the real world as the scary job place that I want to get to, but I don't quite know what it's like, so maybe I need a couple more years of school. And the truth is, you really need to get out there, like you said, apply as much as you can, get your foot in the door. That first job is always the hardest, and then you're essentially being paid to learn. I mean, it's not all, dreams and cookies, whatever. You're at work, you might be doing a shitty entry-level job, but you're surrounded by experts, and that's a huge first step that a lot of people kind of fail because of their self-confidence. And you just have to sort of power through that.
And we were also just kind of joking around, like how, okay, yeah, obviously that's the hardest thing to do is just accept rejection and get over that. And how can how can a student take this advice and actually apply it? And I really think if a group of your peers kind of make it a little challenge or friendly wager, see how many times you can get that rejection letter, how many times you can go through that process and stomach it, and build a tough skin. I don't see any problem with you doing that. There was people that applied at ArenaNet like 10, 12 times, and the first time we were like, absolutely, everyone's like, oh yeah, whatever, this person's not ready, and kept doing that, and finally got hired. And it's a lot of people think it's, oh, I don't want to just annoy a company, but it's not that at all. You're just saying, wow, I'd love to work for you guys. Here's how my work is improving. I apply.
That's the key I was going to tack on, is that, especially this one guy that we worked with, one of the hardest workers we've ever met, and every time he reapplied, he had new stuff to show. It wasn't just like, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. Doing the same thing over and over and expecting better results is nonsense, right? And on the flip side, companies that are looking to hire entry-level people are doing so for a reason. You're a little bit cheaper than you're quite a bit cheaper than a full-time hardcore Scott Alba kind of guy, right? And there is a spot for you, but they're taking an investment in you, right? So if you show them by applying and reapplying, look, in the last 4 months, I've done so much work on my own. Think how much I can grow within the walls of your company. That's the kind of stuff they're looking for. And by all means, that's something that you can use to your advantage. But just make sure you're not doing the thing where you're just being annoying and just spamming people, because that does have to do with the what do you call it? Sort of like the small industry networking thing, which we'll get to in a second. Should we talk a little bit about the kind of projects?
Yes, yeah, exactly. So another huge pitfall we see a lot is just lack of focus, and people doing just time-wasting projects or getting sidetracked on weird mods, like, oh, I'm gonna remake all the buckets in Skyrim and put them in an engine, and I'll make a gold handle on those. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, work on your portfolio. And I have students with just doing all these crazy projects all the time, and it's fine. It's good to do that. It's good to do that as a hobby, but you really need to switch gears when your focus is trying to get hired.
The main thing when you're trying to get hired is to build a portfolio that looks like you've done the job they're asking you to do. So if I want to be a lead character modeler, I better have some stuff that looks like I've worked on 10 separate games, and they're all completely amazing, high-res models that have then been top-gun down to, pressed down to game level poly counts and break and all that stuff. If you can't do that, do the next most realistic thing. But by no means should you be spending your time, and this might be contradictory to what your school's saying, but doing that ultimate Pixar short, right? Doing that 30-second to 2-minute personal animation where I will do the concepts, the storyboards, the writing, the environments, the lights, the texture, rigging, all of that stuff. There's no. I'll use it. There's no fucking job on the face of the planet where you do all those things. There's none. Go to Pixar. All of those things are specialized, right? And you're going to be wasting. No, Yes, you're going to be wasting a lot of time if you're using that as your portfolio piece. I'm going to say, though, that is an amazing tool to learn and experience all the different sort of disciplines within game art, but you can't, I mean, Jason had that as his portfolio for a while, and sort of backfired.
Yeah, so by no means are we discrediting, exploration. It's so important. But that being said, as soon as you decide what you want to do, then that's what you should do. So everything, doing that short, exposing yourself to rigging, animation, concept art, 3D modeling, texturing, whatever, that's great. But once you know what you want to do, then do it, and just, like, I spent my senior year at art school doing some 2D, like, traditional animation, cartoon style, and I never for a second guessed it, like, oh yeah, I guess this is my assignment, I'll just work on this for my final year. And then because of that, it turned out okay, and I got hired working on these kind of interactive Disney games, which was a great experience, but it's just like instantly my career is going off a completely different trajectory, and I never even thought about it. So it's so important to just take that second. I can't stress it enough.
He was at that job for 3 years that he could have spent on a job that was more appropriate to where he was and built up to where he is today and opened up Futurepoly 2 years earlier. So
I know, retired.
There's a huge trick, a pitfall of especially these kind of overzealous projects. You really want to compartmentalize the stuff that you're working on and really think about it realistically. What can I accomplish? I've got to work. I got to go to school. I have to work at Chipotle or whatever you're doing to get your money right, and I have to do my portfolio. So doing an entire level in Unreal Editor might be too crazy or whatever, right? Think about the stuff you're doing, because number one biggest pitfall that we see with people that are really trying and they're zealous and they want to do it, they have the right attitude of putting aside time, is that they're not finishing product, right?
Yeah, so many times it's like, oh, like in my class I'll start out with outdoor environments, building something in UDK, trees and rocks and everything, and I'll see students that'll, they'll get like 80% through that, and then they get started on architecture, the sci-fi corridor, and they get 80% through that, and then they start modeling some crazy like robot Gears of War guy, and 80% through that, and it just continues, and they have no portfolio because nothing's finished. So this one's pretty basic. What can you do, Horia?
Finish your shit.
Finish your shit. Get it done. If it's not good enough, then wrap it up and start again and keep learning, and then eventually your finished stuff will be.
And the way to finish stuff and to make it look good, which is something we'll go on to in just a second here, but again, getting it out there in front of people and seeing it, getting it judged, and taking that criticism, not just stopping. And that kind of leads into a little point we want to make about the community you're building, the people you're asking online, or the people next to you in class, whether it's a college or like a training school like we do, is that you're building from day one of starting to enter the industry. Even before you're in it, you are building a network. You're networking already, right? And so that means that if one of you guys is sitting there whispering, nobody's whispering, right? If you're sitting there whispering and swearing and being a total jerk and poking people, whoever's around you is never going to hire you. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I worked with like 20 of my classmates, which is an insane amount of number when I had like 30 kids in my class. Over the last 13 years, I've worked with seriously like 20 people that I've either gone to school with, and of course from other jobs. By the time I got to my 4th job, there was somebody from every one of the first 3 companies I worked at. It's insane how small the industry is.
Yeah, and all these, if you're doing these things we're talking about, which a lot of people will do naturally, it'll just the network spreads out, and it's an organic thing. And you look back like we didn't anticipate all these people being around us still, but it does that. Your friend flies out to London and works on something, and then he meets all these people, and it's just so important. And then every now and then we'll have a student that's just completely abrasive and negative, just spews negativity, interrupts class, and it's like, for this person, school is bad. Like, you're just telling everyone, hey, I'm Joe, I'm an asshole. Oh, I didn't mean you, Joe. Sorry. Joe Schmo is but that's important. So if you are an asshole, just kind of shut your mouth, I guess, and smile and just keep it inside.
It sounds very like camp counselor-ish, but there's like 3 big rules. Respect other people. I know that sounds ridiculous, but even as you give yourself these critiques, it's about keeping that friendly competition. You're not just putting people on blast. You have to treat the people how you want to be treated, and that's huge, because to this day, there's guys that I work with that I sat with on day 1 of school, and seriously, like Jason said, they're kind of like your friends for life. You find these talented individuals, and you'll be shocked how much they help you grow more than the teachers, because you're sort of rubber banding on off of each other. It's really an amazing thing, and if you can get that, whether it's online or in real life,
yeah. I mean, looking back on it, it's like, well, what are the odds? I can't believe every one of these people are doing great and successful. But it's just a natural side effect of surrounding yourself with the right people. That's going to happen, and it's that's where the competition thing. You identifying the people that are strong. You want to learn from, and obviously.
And that doesn't just mean only be friends with people that are better than you and kick ass at art. If somebody's struggling, they're a friend of yours, help them the hell out. Help them out. Be there for people. It's something that's so easy to do, is to just give somebody 5 minutes of your time every day to just kind of help them cross the line on a finish on a project, or give them an honest, sensitive critique on their portfolio. Stuff like that really carries through. And I never took it that seriously, but by the time I became an art director, I had friends who over the years had supported me because of that, because of just being helpful in school or whatever, right? And they were always reciprocating it to me, because I always needed, where'd I put my USB stick? Use mine. I mean, it was just like this collaboration. And even if it's not art related, just being respectful, we can't stress that enough. It's huge. We wouldn't be talking about it at this awesome event if it wasn't a serious and very important topic. And just one last note. There's companies I've worked at, I think, at least the last 3 companies I've worked at for sure, there's people that have been kick-ass, some of the best in the industry, that were turned down. I mean, their portfolios got them flown in. Let's put them up over the weekend. Let's take them out to fancy dinner. Let's get them in for the interview. And they were complete jerks, sort of these like rock stars, and had these big attitudes. And your portfolio cannot save you from being a prick. And that's serious. That's serious. And I think what's our last thing here?
That's the big one here, the big papa. No finish line. There shouldn't be a finish line for you. Obviously, you're trying to grow. You're trying to be a better artist. There's no line in the sand where you're like, oh, I think I did it. I'm at the finish line. Congratulations. Give me a job.
Wait, but I got a degree, and I've done every assignment, and now every assignment's in my portfolio.
Yeah, I mean, that is where so many people hit the wall. And if you rest all your expectations and dreams on one individual point and you don't get it, you're just crushed, and you move back home, and that's it. I tried my best. So having those expectations or that false finish line is suicide. You should never do that.
There's definitely that we see that all the time. People come to Futurepoly and say, I don't know why I got this degree and I can't get a job. Because a degree doesn't get you a job. A portfolio will. A. B, you have to be completely realistic, like we talked about with how you're judging yourself. And once you realize the problem, there's no such thing as, okay, then in 3 months, I'll do what you say, I'll follow all these little guidelines, and I'm going to go get a job in 3 months. And then if I don't, I'm moving back to the country. 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, a lifetime. There's no finish line for getting better and improving. And the second you stop, you're dead in the water. We've worked with guys that have been demoted and fired, not because they were bad, but because they got bad in proportion when everybody around them was growing, And that's not a situation you want to be in. That's very sad. Even when once you're in a place and you're working in the industry, there's never a finish.
Yeah, and this right before we're going to get to the real stuff in 1 second, but everything ties in with, do you love it? Do you actually love doing this? If you don't, there's people that do love it, and they're going to do it all the time just for fun, and you're going to compete with that. So that's the overall thing. Talent I think is bullshit. It's just, in some areas, and in areas like skills and crafts, talent, you just, if you enjoy doing it, you're naturally going to do it all the time, naturally get better, and just put that mileage in,
And the last thing, as we talk about this is going to be us sort of taking student projects, doing a first paint over, and that's usually where it ends. They don't follow up with us. We're like, okay. But we went and did kind of a third, and sometimes fourth paint over just to show the iteration process, and we wouldn't call any of this stuff done. This is the kind of stuff we do when we're doing personal projects. At work, it happens naturally. Like, I've got people breathing down my neck about change this, fix this, change that, and I thrive off of that. That's the way you get better and make stuff that, just like we said, there's no finish line. There's also not a very straight or direct path. You have to think about where you want to be eventually, and then kind of work your way backwards and think, what's the thing I can do today to get there? And if that means, literally, I'm going to work at McDonald's and I'm going to spend 1 hour a night working on my portfolio, do that. And if we get an unpaid internship while still working at McDonald's, great. What's the next goal? You're just thinking about taking whatever you can get and really working your butt off, because eventually that hard work's going to pay off. But there's no straight line to the top. There's not one clear path. I mean, Jason, hey, he learned a ton doing the animation stuff. It wasn't what he wanted to do. He's animating Winnie the Pooh instead of doing these epic, huge environments. But there's stuff I'm sure that you've learned that you still care.
Yeah, it's definitely not like I regret it, but I also feel that, departing some of that advice, might help someone get further or quicker along. Yeah, so a lot of these are, like Horia mentioned, these are all student works at the beginning, and that's kind of the critique process. I'd rather just do paint overs, and because a lot of it's still exploring other ideas, and you can just verbally critique something all day long, but visual representation of that I think is a lot more important. This one here was somebody's art test for ArenaNet, and this is where they're at, and this is actually not too bad. A lot of the technical details there. It's just he's a lot further along than some of the other tests we've seen, and if Horia snags that, it's that this stuff is not in the concept. Adding ivy and moss and ropes and awnings, this shows that you actually love doing this, and you actually care about making this better, and it's not risky. These changes aren't risky. It's not redesigning the whole structure of the building. It's just making it something believable, something people want to explore in a virtual world.
With a very, very small amount of work, you're improving what's already there. And companies are pretty clever with your stuff. Taking the same house, duplicating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, putting some fog on there, you've got a village instead of a hut. And starting to think about that. If you compare screenshots, that's all those guys are doing. They're just reusing stuff all the time. Here's another test. This is pretty self-explanatory. Let me zoom in a tad. Pretty drab, boring. You'll see the same kind of fixes on each one. It's making it feel lived in and like it's a real place. It's not just something with repeating textures that's equally grimy. And then once again, just slightly contextualizing it. Take your model or whatever. This took me 5 minutes in Photoshop to just add a couple of trees and a couple of sky texture or something, but it sort of gives a person viewing this the idea that you understand where it would go. And it just goes so much further without a lot of changes to sell your concept, right?
The most valuable thing here, I think, is in 3D, and a lot of this stuff is 3D specific at the beginning, but it goes into just regular, any kind of illustration or concept advice. But being able to step away from your package, like if you're in 3D Max, you have no idea. It might take you 4 hours to try an IV solution, and you have you're just winging it. But if you step outside of the kind of technical requirements and just jump into Photoshop, even if you're not the best concept artist, you can copy and paste photos, you can transform to match the perspective, and you can try out the IV solution or adding windows or trees in 10 minutes, and then you have a roadmap, and you're like, okay, I need to make all these changes, and here we go, And then when you're back into a 3D program, it becomes easy.
And the thing we're talking about applies very much the same way to concept and illustration, because you're not just making something that's up to your best judgment at work ever. You're trying to please your bosses, you're trying to please the customer, whatever. And so putting yourself in that same mindset when you're building things, whether it's through your peers on the internet or your buddies in real life, going through this exact process. So I think this one's pretty impressive what Jason did with this. If you want to kind of talk about what
so this guy was at a great start. He was actually really successful after school and everything, but it's just a little too clean. He's got a lot of material blending, but the roof edges are extremely straight, so sloping those and just anytime there's a real rigid 3D kind of edge or contrast between elements, that's what you want to address, whether it's shadows or material blending. So he was already close, and these are the changes he had made, and it starts to feel a lot closer. Now one of the things he had talked about was he wanted this to be a steampunk house, and the shot I don't have was him. He just had like a gasworks park style thing right next to it, and this was an example of really pushing that element. Like if you want to do something steampunk, like really integrate it and make a whole floating city of these things or whatever, He didn't do that, so I fucked
Yeah,
him.
not just the steampunk doorknob, you know, whatever theme you're trying to sell, again, it's the same canister, copied, pasted a couple times, flipped horizontal, a couple gears, you know, one repeating rust texture, but it brings it from this like very basic house model to something that looks like it could have taken, you know, a very professional artist a long time to do, and that's just because of the small amount of work in doing these extra pipes and stuff, right?
So this one here, he starts out and he's actually showcasing the weakest elements of this tree. And you know, the general lighting's okay, but that's default UVK lighting. So this next one was, you know, adding some color and a little bit of just framing branches or whatever, but actually really spin the polys on that tree. That's the main thing in the scene.
One of the most important things that Jason did in this was thinking about, that applies to everything, again, 2D, 3D, is contextualizing the stuff for whatever company you're applying to, right? And I think this kind of speaks for itself. So this would be for what?
Yeah, like, oh, hey, I'm going to work at Nintendo. It's a happy little tire scene.
But what if you want to work on Left 4 Dead?
Oh,
Gross. Oh my gosh, Jason, what did you do?
It's worth taking a minute and doing something like that. I mean, this is kind of gimmicky, but think like you're trying to get a job at a place. You want that focus, that laser goal. So if you do that kind of thing, you know, it's gonna speak measures.
This one looked like just crap to me, right? And you'll see that the first stuff that Jason had him do was just, you know, this is in-class paint over stuff. So you're not trying to reach for the sky and get this person freaked out about the amount of work they need to put in it, but you do want to show them the next logical step. And the next logical step is messing with the silhouette and making sure that it looks broken up, and it's not just very basic square geometry.
And line width is huge on this one. It's all the same. It's like you had the one, you know, Sharpie and everything's the same line width. And that's just like in illustration or concepts, that's a huge deal. So there's no reason why that should be disregarded in, you know, 3D art. And it's easy. It's easy as hell to add that stuff.
But to take that from regular to sort of like a professional, and this is still, you know, something that's useful, right? Like broken down crap is in every game. Call of Duty's nothing but half destroyed stuff, right? Think about the lighting. Look what a difference it makes to the believability of the shape to affect the lighting, you know? So Jason's silhouette makes a giant difference in terms of believability, and then the lighting helps you really sell the shape. And then if you want to go balls out, get it out of 3D and really, again, contextualize it and put that fire in there. Hey, look, it's a burning house. Let's have it burning, right? It's just cute little stuff like that that doesn't take terribly long, but it can give you that edge.
Here's another one where I felt like he got really, he had all the right intentions. He's adding a crazy amount of detail, but he's still not breaking through those clean edges and stuff, and you know, just weathering, layering the wallpaper, the design, the plants. It should all seem really redundant. The straight edges on the roof should be crooked. The shingles should be mottled. You know, I hope, you know, anyone here or if people in class, I hope they just think, oh yeah, you're just gonna say add plants and you're gonna tell me to crooked up the roof. I'm like, yeah, I hope you feel that way. That's how I felt with Daniel telling me this shit all, you know, for the last 10 years, like, you know, and then it became something where like, okay, I'm just gonna start doing this stuff the first time, and you know, just kind of self-art directing.
And that's literally the difference between a pro and a student. You're constantly a student, but as a professional, you've got people that are even more badass than any teacher telling you this stuff day in, day out, and your mistakes become ingrained in your head, and you're like, oh, I'm not gonna make that mistake again. Then he finds a new one, and so after years and years, you kind of pick it up, and you know, that's the stuff we're trying to get to. Is the sooner you start comparing yourself to the stuff that's out there, the sooner you start to kind of just think about the simple things that make that difference. That take it from a scene that looks like it's, hey, a foggy Italian city, to a bunch of yellow boxes. You know, there's really barely any geometry difference in here. You know, it's just a little bit of Photoshop and a little bit of crooked edges and stuff. It's nothing that's out of his reach by any stretch of the imagination. I like this one a ton. Jason did a great paint over on this one, and it's because this is something that we took very seriously on Gilbert's, was just taking everything to this most unique and sort of fantastical place you can. And this is a great, interesting, weird sort of fantasy cabin, but play with it! Look what a fun roof. Why can't you do that, right? There's nothing saying that these structures aren't logical, right? Why make churches and towers and weird stuff that we have going on today, you know? It's just interesting to people.
And yeah, a lot of times working in 3D, this kind of thing is like, oh, you don't have to treat it with like very technically. You can just copy and paste the roof up, skew it out, and try to design on the fly. You know, it's not a clear division between 3D and concept. It's just back and forth. It's very organic. So, you know, whether you're concept or like production 3D artist, I think you should, you know, put those preconceptions aside and just.
And 2D guys, I mean, again, I hope you're seeing the parallels here, because look at the gray background, and then, you know, 10, 15 minutes, I can take it from something that's a much improved model to being something that's part of a really interesting scene, right? It feels like it's on top of Lincoln Lane, something or other, right? And, you know, this is a very rough kind of paint over, but it still gives the effect. This level of roughness, as long as it's pinpointed at solving the problem, is actually acceptable. And at work, I can get away with doing rough stuff like this to give to the modelers. And it's just a few extra minutes of work that can take your portfolio from being sort of just a, you know, box almost. Even though this is relatively creative compared to the first thing that they were doing, to a full-blown scene. Same kind of deal we got here. Just to rush along so we can get you guys into question. How much time do we have? Great. Okay. I'll kind of just burn through these. Jason got a really great silhouette going on here, doing a lot of stuff like in Gilder's, breaking it up, giving every piece that you make feel like it has a bit of history. It's not just there. You know, it's been there for years. It's been worn and torn, and all the different materials have to look like they're used from the area that surrounds this prop. And so, again, just contextualizing it, putting it into an environment. You know, you can do it in Photoshop, or you can do just, you know, a tree model and a bush model, and duplicate those in something like UDK, and you can go from having, you know, your half-finished hut to having a full scene in, you know, literally just a couple of days in 3D.
And again, that's a clear roadmap. You know, anyone that had that model, they can you know, photo match that together, take their favorite reference, you know, off of Flickr or whatever, and then they know exactly where to finish that environment. And then each asset's broken down. You have the palm tree, you have the hut variant, you have the dirt textures. Boom, that's your blog, that's your portfolio already, and it's all, you know, it's just streamlined. So it's way better than the, you know, dumpster and the handgun and the anime.
We'll skip this one.
Portfolio.
It's just more about finding friggin' reference. You know, not having something that's so basic that looks like there's probably a button to make half circle shape in 3D Studio Max, right? Look at how interesting the shapes are in the real world, and then what people are doing within concept, and incorporate some of that. The whole point of any portfolio, 2D or 3D concept or environment design, is showing off your skills, showing off, you know, and making something that looks like a geometric primitive, even in concept art, right? Making the most boxy, easy to draw house doesn't mean that it's something that will inspire the modelers, and that's the whole point of concept art. Let's see here. Maybe we'll go a little quicker. We definitely want to give you guys some chance for Q&A.
Add roofs, that's huge. No. Sometimes it's not even finished, and that's good. Still good to look for feedback and just make sure you're heading the right direction.
And that's key, is showing stuff before it's finished can help you, you know, do one of these for yourself, do one of these for a friend, have a friend do it for you, and you can take this back and work from it, as opposed to go all out and render the hell out of something and then show it to somebody. You're gonna be out of luck. At work, you gotta have your stuff shown 2-3 times a day, and you'll be surprised how much work that saves you in the end. If you do that whole thing where I'll show you when it's done, you're gonna be in for a bad treat when the art director sees it. What's a bad treat? I just couldn't think of it.
Poisons.
Again, just that contextualization Jason's doing with the lighting and a couple other small props.
Yeah, this was kind of a continuation of the next one over, which was the first one. So the student had started here and then just talked about, you know, first of all, the perspective is completely useless at this, looking up at this thing. If you're trying to sell a desert scene, it doesn't make sense. So a simple camera change and adding that atmosphere in there, and just taking the same assets. And, you know, I like to give people advice on, you know, this is what you have. I know it's a ton of work. Let's work with what you have. If you have these shapes and these things, let's figure it out.
And we all benefit from being art directors, right? We're now telling people this stuff, but I mean, we've had years and years of people telling this stuff to us, and that's the thing that a lot of students are lacking. They don't have any of that guidance, so that's why we're talking about getting on the internet. Should we start Q&A and I can just put these sort of casually?
Yeah, sure.
Are there any questions?
Just anything at all.
Yes, sir. Go ask Tom Scholes, who's right outside there. The guy is self-taught on the internet. The lead character guy at ArenaNet, Jamie Jones. Who knows Jamie Jones? It's like mini Craig Mullins, mini. He'll be here tonight. Yeah, right. I mean, like some of the absolute best guys I know did not go to school, but that doesn't mean they didn't study. There's that degree. I'm not saying is not a good thing to get. You want to challenge yourself. It's awesome, but a degree is not going to get you a job. And if you're
when was the last time someone asked for your degree?
Never. Nor have I ever looked at
I think same thing with your pops, Daniel. I don't know.
Yeah.
They never even asked him. So it's like your work is obviously it's a visual field. That is your degree. If you want to teach at a university someday, then maybe that would come in handy. But it's
Futurepoly is not accredited because we couldn't make a school because we don't have master's degrees in video game art because we were out there doing it and learning from people and making money doing it. We weren't getting a master's degree in video game art. That's awesome if you got it. I am not saying anything bad about degrees. It's just that piece of paper is never ever going to take away replace your personal study. I promise you. But I mean it's fucking hard. it's hard to be in here. Here's another. Any question? Any more questions?
You were saying that your portfolio should be company oriented. So, for example, if you want to work in Blizzard, you've got to have some sort of fantasy art. You've got to have red. So you're saying go from your favorites and
Yeah, that's one of the first things we talk to students about is you should definitely be able to vocalize that. If you don't know yet, that's fine, keep exploring. But there's nothing, I can't see any downside to that. The only thing that's a little risky is if you want to make something that's not as marketable, a style, maybe something like if Little Big Planet is your dream, you really want to work on that, it might be a little niche.
There's only
and if they're not hiring, then you might not have much opportunity. But I would still say go for it, because if you really love it and all those things we talked about earlier, you meet those requirements and you overcome those issues, and it's like who the hell's going to tell you you can't do it, I see no problem with.
one more question. So you haven't spoken about entry-level positions. What do they usually entail? Do they work more environment or do they work?
Yeah, most companies are split up. They split disciplines, and there's entry-level positions in each one of those categories. For environment art, you'll be doing a lot of actual map editor work and making individual trees, bushes, rocks, houses. That's what I started out. That's even like guys like Cake Guy started out in painting like little dirt squares, and so it's something to say. There's something to be said about getting your foot in the door and just navigating through a company once you're in there, because obviously you're going to be surrounded by talent, and that's the best people to learn from.
I mean, yeah, specifically, you will never get your ideas in the game. You're going to be doing stuff like my first job was, little textures that were like this big, like 32 by 32 pixel storefronts for Nintendo 64, and that was like on a good day. On a bad day, they had a six polygon. 6 polygon. That's six triangles, right? No. For bushes, right? And this guy made all these bushes and placed them by hand. There was no level editors. He just placed them by hand along this motorcycle, whatever, racetrack. And then the programmer said, "Oh my God, this is too high poly." So he made a 4 polygon bush, and he said, "Horia, go ahead and trace all of my 6 polygon bushes." So I was sitting there moving, scaling, skewing, shrinking, twisting every bush to perfection to where he had placed it, because he wouldn't trust me to just place them because I'm an idiot. I'm 17 years old, right? So he's just like, and I was making, it was probably free at the time, but my first job was $7 an hour, and my friend at 7-Eleven was making $7.50. But take that fucking job. It was the best decision I ever made, and that, turned into a second job, into a third job, into a fourth job, and before you know it, that's how your career takes off. You can't be choosy when you're starting out. Get your foot in the door. One more minute. Any more awesome questions? I'm going to just run through the rest of these quickly. Questions, Jason?
Oh yeah, in the back.
How is it work? I know this may not be the way, but large studios versus small studios and learning from your coworkers in those studios. Do you tend to excel faster maybe in a small studio or a large studio?
I'm always a big proponent of like small groups of people, even within a big studio. I think kind of splitting them up into small squads of artists that all get along and they have their little bit of ownership and can all tackle the same thing. I think you learn a lot that way. Every studio is different. I can only speak for what I've done at a couple of companies. I was at ArenaNet for a long time, so a lot of my experiences stems from that.
The main trick is that you do have to be very outgoing and be open to criticism, not defensive, and ask people, ask for input, ask for advice. People are very stoked to give you help if you go home and you work your ass off on personal projects and then show them. They really respect that, and they'll take time out of their day and give you their expertise. The one other difference I want to say between a big company and a small company is that bigger companies tend to be more specialized, so there might be somebody who knows about ZBrush hair making or whatever, right? But smaller companies have people that are more generalists, so you get to just get your fingers on all sorts of different pots, just trying all sorts of different cool things. So it's really, there's no negative to working anywhere as long as you're very outgoing and understand what your goals are.
And I've talked a lot about career navigation. Once you're in a studio, you can easily, figure out what you want to do from there. You shouldn't feel pigeonholed. If you want to really do characters in your environment art, you damn well better be making characters on the weekend and showing them to the character guys. And they're not going to think you're a bad employee because you're that passionate. They'll find a spot for you. As soon as one opens up, all the character guys know, holy crap, this guy's amazing. Let's bring him on the team. And you're doing what's right for yourself, and ultimately a company will see that, and they want to support people. They want to keep talent around. Otherwise, they'll just, the people will leave. They'll get offers somewhere else. So.
This is with a trackpad, guys. Pretty pro. All right. Thanks for being around.